In this video, I'm going to go over how to render this scene. So I'll go over concrete materials and how to get materials looking really good and detailed. Then we'll go over lighting and also adding a little bit of color grading with compositing. Let's jump in. Alright, so I'm going to start off with my default scene inside of Blender. So this default scene you can download in the free resources link down in the description below. And basically it's just got a few things set up by default. So it's already got this set up here, which is a world lighting. Now I've explained this in previous videos, but pretty much all that is happening is we've got a HDR lighting for our world lighting. And then here we also have a background. So basically this only provides lighting for our scene and isn't visually showing. And if it was visually showing, it would look like this. And it probably is reduced by quite a bit, but basically it'd be this scene here. So it's actually mixed together with a light path or camera ray node. And that allows me to toggle between lighting the scene, and then this one will be visually the background. So the first thing that I'm going to do, I will just leave this because what I'm going to do is actually set up my scene over here and I'll have a background plane. So let's click the environment here, Shift A, and I'll add in a plane, and this will be sort of our floor. So this is when I can sort of start moving my camera around. So I'm going to move it up to the side here. You can rotate this a little bit if you would like. I'm going to reduce the world lighting strength down to 0.2 just for the beginning. Yeah. And then what I'm going to do is add in another plane. So I'll just Shift D, duplicate this one, rotate this one vertically, and I'll just start moving this back like so. And then the last thing I want to add is just a giant cube, and this is what I put over the side. And I'm just going to put it in like this. But before we do that, let me just tell you that if you want to learn how to use Blender for product rendering professionally, then you should grab our course, Master Product Visualization, which has over 3,000 plus students and will teach you everything you need to know from packaging to modeling to lighting and doing product animations inside of Blender. You'll learn all the tricks and tips while working with real-world examples, allowing you to build your own portfolio. So by the end of the course, you'll be able to create your own professional renders that are the next level above everyone else. So go ahead and grab the course. The link is in the video description and in the pinned comment under the video. Let's jump back in. Now I just want to move this, so G. Basically all this is a camera. The camera has a constraint to it. So you can see here that I've got a track 2 constraint. This is targeted to an empty in the center of my scene. So I can move the empty. The camera is also parented to the empty. So when I move that empty, the camera moves. But if I move the camera, it always points at that center point, which is super handy. So let's go G, Z, Z, and we'll move this in. We're going to come over here. We'll press home on our keyboard. That'll just fill this area. And then we can, oops, got rid of my camera. We can just sort of start positioning this. And then we want to start positioning. We go to top view. We can hold down shift. We can start positioning this as well, our concrete. And another thing I like to do is if you lift this up just off the edge, it gives that natural look. What I'm going to do, go 512 on viewport samples. Let's add the noise threshold on. Turn off denoise. And I just want to lift that edge up a little bit. And what it does, if I go Control B and select a box to only render this view so I can zoom in, what it does here is just gives us a little lip, a little bit of darkness under there. All right. So let me just zoom out a little bit. I'm going to go Control B. I'm going to select this bottom here. If you do this, it reduces render time, so it doesn't think about rendering the rest of this. And I'm actually using a Grayscale Gorilla. So if we look for Grayscale Gorilla Studio, now this is paid textures. You can find loads of free textures on Polyhaven. There's a few other ones, Ambient CG. And basically I use paid textures just because of the quality. So these textures are quite high quality and they turn out really nice, especially when they have bump maps. So I'm going to go to materials. I'm just going to come into here to the concretes, and I think I picked one of these two. So I wanted one with some bumps in it. And the reason for this is because not all these have a displacement. And so when we can use a displacement, it's really good. So let's send this asset. We need to connect it first. So there's a plugin for this. You connect it. You can send the asset and it will send it to the active Blender scene. And then we've got it in here. So this will be number 2 here. And then that's been imported there. So then I want to also apply it down to the base here. And what I'm going to do is just go to my unused data, purge all materials, so that I'm only using materials that are in my scene. And I duplicated this one and called this one floor. The reason for that is I've got 2 separate materials now I can work with. Cube, but they both start off with the same textures. They also have a displacement here. So what we need to do to get displacement working, first of all, come into your render properties here, down to subdivision, and then we're going to turn the dicing rate up to like 4 or 2. This way it can render a lot faster. You can also turn the viewport that way. But basically what happens is Blender needs to tessellate the material to increase the detail when we're subdividing. And if you've got this down at 1, the tessellation takes a long time before it starts. As long as you don't shift anything in the scene between renders, the tessellation should be done and the renders will be faster. Let's jump down to material properties down here. And I just want to make sure that I've got displacement and bump under the settings turned on so that we're seeing it. Now we're not going to see anything yet because we need a dense mesh. So what we need to do is add topology to this. So I just go Control 2, that will add a subdivision modifier. Now we don't want to deform the mesh in any way. We want to keep the cubes. So let's just go simple, like so. And we can go adaptive subdivision on. And this is when we start to see the details. So let's go over here and we'll go Control Alt B to bring back everything like so. Now I want to scale this texture down just a tad. So we'll come down here. You can do 2 things. You can just click and drag across them all and then let go and go retype your value. What I also like to do is just put a value node here and that will combine them all into one. So scale that one down and that's good to go. And we'll keep it like this for now until we get to rendering. Then this floor we need to add adaptive subdivision. So Control 2 to add the subdivision modifier. Then we'll go simple here. Then we'll go check that on. I'm not sure if this affects us. Somewhere in here under performance, we're using both, for subdivision, we're using both the GPU and the CPU. I'm actually unsure of how to fix that. That's fairly new that I've seen that. Anyway, that's good. We can continue on. So this one, the floor, we want to scale this one too. I think I had about a scale of 6 on this one to shrink it down. Now I want to get my lighting in about now, just because I need to work with my textures a bit more. And so I can't work with my textures anymore until I've got my lighting in. Another thing I've done is rotated this mapping node here on my world lighting, and that starts to bring the shadow around. And the reason I'm doing that is I want the shadow to match. I want it to match what we're about to put in. So let's create a light. So Shift A, we'll create a light here, an area light. Now, if you're using Node Wrangler or paid add-on, you can just hit Tab and point it at the edge here. And you know what? I want it coming into this back angle. So let's point it sort of back around here, like so. And I might still have to manually place this. So let's rotate this around. I'm going to lift it up, scale it down a little bit, maybe RZZ to rotate on the local axes. And then I'll bring it in here. And then I'm just going to reduce this spread way down. We'll go down to like 20, we'll see what happens. It's not quite what I'm looking for yet, so down further to 5. And we just want to see that edge. So see that edge here? That's what we're looking for. So let's bring this up, rotate this down. I'll just quickly show you what this all looks like. So this is what it's looking like right now. And so I actually want to shrink this into just a beam, and then we'll rotate it on the Z axis. You can hold Shift to move it slowly. I want to move my light up a little bit, and I might grab this here and move the whole scene up a little bit. And so the thing here now we've got to do, let's move this back. Let's bring this back, rotate it forward more. Move it up. We could keep going up maybe, and then rotate it down. XX. So we get it like this. Move it forward a little bit. And this is usually when I would do a render. So hit to solid view on both of these so that I'm not using rendering power here. Hit F12. And the reason I'm doing a final render here is to look at the detail in my scene here. Now I've got compositing turned on, so we'll turn that off for now. And so what I'm going to do first of all is if I jump over here into rendered view, this is far too bright. So we're going to reduce this down to like 5. And then you'll notice that it hasn't got a lot of contrast yet. And so what I would do is boost the contrast inside of the compositor, because I want more contrast anyway. So there you go. That's looking fairly good. We've got that little edge that we like down there. We've got lots of detail in here. We've got, actually the camera has also got some an aperture, so it's got a focus target. So you can set the depth of field to an empty, and then you can move the depth of field around, which it's hard to see there, but basically what that does is it will only focus on a slim area, like between here and here, and the smaller that depth of field is, the finer the focus. So if I went 1, you can see how everything starts to go blurry. And maybe what I'll do is see if I can get it to like a final render for you guys. Denoise. Same settings. The render looks different to the output, which is always strange. Anyway, let's go F12. And that soon will bring up all the detail in here. It's still too bright. What I did to think is if you rotate this slightly. See, when you rotate it all the way around, you get more detail back. So what I'm going to do is actually get that light, take it back further, then rotate it forward. Then I can try rotating this just a tad. Do we face the camera here? We go back further. Oops. G. Yeah, I think that's looking better. I'll go GZ. Bring that down. If you want a sharper, harsher edge, what you can do is reduce the spread down to like 2, and you see that gets even sharper. I want it maybe about 3. I'm just going to shift this across a bit and bring this in. I'm going to rotate it back a little. Let's grab up the focal range. Shift A, let's add in another light. And I'm going to change this light to disk. I'm going to rotate it, lift it up, move it across to the side here. And then I'm just going to reduce it down to like 1. I'm just going to face this at the back, in between this gap. So you see here, reduce the spread to like 120. And it's just giving a little bit of light to that back there. Let's save the file. I'll press F2 to render. It'll go through its tessellation. There you go. So that's the render there. Then I'll just quickly show you what I did for compositing. So open up an image editor here, and then you'll also have the render result, and that'll be plugged into the output. So this is usually what I've got here generally. So what I have next is a glare node, which a glare is not going to do much in this scene, and you just adjust the threshold, which the lower the threshold, the more light it allows to glare, and then the higher, the more, basically it's measuring highlights, so it'll lessen how much glaze you get. So for this one, I probably won't use glare, so you can just hit M to mute a node, and it goes straight through. And then you can use another glare node. This one's set to bloom, and this one is like a bloom effect. So if we bring that down, you'll see that that is like haloing. It's getting a bloom, and so it's quite nice for cinematic look. And then this is where all the magic happens, is through the RGB curves here. So then we plug that one in. And you can see here that this is what gave it all its contrast. So I put an S curve in this. If you lift this side here, it lifts the whites. If you drop that one down, it darkens the black. So it's basically just adding contrast. And so the more contrast you want, you can do that. You can also reduce the factor if you want to just fine tune it. And so there you have it. So there's a render. Now it is the displacement on the grayscale gorilla texture. So if we go back here, this texture here, right? it's got displacement. So this is what this looks like. So it's got displacement map in the Grayscale Gorilla texture. And so this is what's creating our immense detail in our scene in the concretes, along with adaptive subdivision. So you see how detailed that is? And then if you lower these values, like the dicing rate, because it currently is dicing at 4 pixels, which it's tessellating every 4 pixels, which I think is fine. But if you lower that, it gets even more and more detailed. The only thing is initialize, like when you do an initial render, you see tessellating circle, it has to tessellate everything when you make changes. All right. So that's it for this video. If you would like any tutorials, comment them down below. If you would like a modeling tutorial on how to do this, I would be happy to do that. Just ask below. If you're interested in the workshop on the 3 must-know elements to improve your 3D product renders inside a Blender, then click the link below to head to the workshop. I'll see you in the next one.